What's up? I think you guys can hear me. We are live. This is a Ricky Patreon podcast, Ricky Rants with Fans. It's what I call it. It's a Patreon podcast. If you guys are new to the show, there's a Ripple Effect podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Rants, also known as Ricky Randis. And I've been doing that for a while, so I'm just going to continue doing it. And today we have a Patreon podcast. If you want to support this show, you can support us on Patreon. In the show description, I'll have links to all that stuff. And if you do support the show on Patreon, once a month, I do a Patreon podcast with my Patreon supporters where we just hang out and talk. So this is one of those things. So I figured I go live. Why not? I don't go live on YouTube, and who knows how much longer I will be on YouTube. So I figure, why not go live with these? I think I did it for the first time on the last episode, and maybe I'll continue doing it as long as I am still able to stream on YouTube and post on YouTube. So I know OBDM just got kicked off YouTube or got another strike. I know James Corbett is about one strike away from being completely removed. I think there's somebody in YouTube that thinks I'm cute or likes my show, because I don't understand how I stick around with minimal issues, I guess I can say. Just 2 episodes been removed. But either way, we'll save the discussion for the actual show when everybody joins us. So remember, all the stuff will be in the show description. Links to my merch, links to the UNWANTED, which is the other show I do, links to audio, video, all the locations you can find this stuff will be in the show description. And that's it. So I'll stop screen sharing with you guys, and I'll start letting people in. Let's do this. I'm sorry, I lost track of what screen I'm on. And let's see who's joining us today. Ronnie, Thomas, Andrew. Let's do this. And we got some friends joining us. What's up? Andrew, what's up? Oh, how do you
What's up, Ricky?
What's up, bud?
Good to see you, man.
False reality check. What's up, guys?
Hey there. What's going on?
What?
Loving that sombrero, Andrew.
And Zach, another old friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy silly hats and silly glasses as we talk about the craziest shit in the world. You know,
right on.
I don't wonder why sometimes people are like, "What is this guy in the sombrero saying to me?" That there's been thousands, hundreds of thousands of deaths from this toxic experimental injection. I can't believe that from a crazy guy in a sombrero.
Of course not. You're crazy. Look at you.
Yeah, right. I like the hat because it takes the temperature down in the room, you know, typically. And people, we're just so divided that the hat, I enjoy the hat and I'm not going to take it off.
I enjoy the hat too. It makes me smile.
Yeah, seriously. That's what I like to make people smile. I always have my whole life. So I'm going to continue on with that, you know?
That's right.
So,
and I haven't shaved my head in a while, so my head's due for a shave.
Well, thanks everybody for being with me. I know it's kind of short notice, but the only people I don't know, I don't think, have you guys, false reality check? I don't think you guys have been on the show before. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Do you want to take it away?
Sure. Yeah. My wife subscribed first, and then we changed our profile to this because we actually started a podcast ourselves. But we've been listening to you for a while, Ricky, and listen to Sam and Charlie and Union of the Unwanted. That's my shirt. My shirt's from you guys as well. So we just decided to kind of start a podcast to chronicle our journey. We're trying to escape California and go for greener pastures. So we're just working on that.
Yeah.
So we decided a podcast would kind of help us guide us through the activity and include building a community around it and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think we're 7 episodes in?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So we're babies, but got to keep plugging along for sure.
Yeah.
So you guys are 7 episodes in, and so you a lot of people, it's funny, like I've been doing this since 2013. I know Sam's been doing podcasting for a while too. Just Tinfoil Hat podcast is kind of a newer project, but he was doing I think, Punch Drunk for a long time, and he had a couple other shows with like strippers and I don't know, like a bunch of weird stuff. He likes interesting people, to say the least. And but yeah, he's been around for a while too. But Charlie, it's amazing too how popular Charlie's show's become. And he, like, I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday he was pitching the idea of starting a podcast. So I guess my point is it's not ever too late to jump in, you know, and just be a part of it. I know we all kind of feel like we're always late to the party. In 2013, I felt like I was late. I'm like, oh, you know, there's so many podcasts, you know, who's going to want to listen to me? But the more there are of us, the better, you know, just kind of spreading. So what's your what's kind of the idea of the podcast? Are you guys doing casual conversation? Are you hitting on certain specific type of topics, or how long do they go for?
Yeah, they go kind of long. We have long conversations.
I think, we do casual conversations, current news, you know.
We'd like to start doing interviews, but we figure if once we get to a certain amount of episodes and we have a certain amount of followers, we can reach out and start really getting some authors and, you know, other people on to talk to us about it and see where it goes from there. But it's all about kind of learning new things. We've learned a lot from listening to different podcasts and reading books that people have recommended, and like growing your own food and, you know, kind of detaching from the mainstream kind of society and going back to basics, I guess. Yeah,
and just chronicling that journey, basically. Right now we're in the city, you know, and just escaping.
We just want to get out to a little bit more rural of an area. Yeah.
But we're still trying to grow our own food and start a community, and hopefully through this podcast we can build one here for now. Yeah. Until we get out of here.
You guys grow up in California?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we did.
Both of us. Yeah. My dad's from Idaho. My mom's from Mexico. And then I think.
Yeah, my mom's from Mexico and my dad's from back east, like Kentucky.
Nice. So your parents wear similar hats to Andrew, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Ricky, I thought about shaving everything, but just the mustache. I think I might try that pretty soon. See how that goes over.
They're like, we're actually Mexican and we're not wearing a hat. Why is Andrew wearing that?
We should have put it on.
I know.
My sombrero's in the other room.
Yeah, we actually do have a sombrero in the house. So.
Oh, you do? You should go throw it on just for.
Man,
just
it's an Angels one.
Yeah. Free angel sombrero.
Angels.
That's great. Yeah. I
told everybody that a sombrero would prevent COVID. Everybody would wear one.
Yeah. Actually, Zach, you were coming in a little low there. Is that for anybody else or?
Yeah.
Low.
It's very low. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not the only one. All right. Normally, I'm the only crazy one who can't hear.
Yeah, we'll start eventually. Yeah, I mean, the thing about podcasting is, especially in the beginning of it, I feel like we all start them because we have a lot to say. You know, it's like you have all these ideas in your head and these conversations, these internal conversations, and a lot of times you just don't have anybody to discuss those things with. And then podcasting is kind of a format where you can kind of get some of it off your chest or talk to people that are like-minded and bounce ideas off one another. But it's amazing how you grow in the whole process. Like the listeners grow, you know, they go on the journey with you. Everybody who participates, you know, the guests, the hosts, everybody grows together because it happens to me all the time where in the middle of it happens a lot during interviews. Like I'll be interviewed on a show and they'll ask me a question while I'm answering it. I'm like figuring out my answer and reanalyzing my answer. And if I'm like, well, I don't know if I really believe this or believe that, but and it's like I'm almost having those internal dilemmas and discussions while I'm talking about it. And that's one of the powers of conversation is that a lot of times when you try to verbalize something, it forces you to really dissect it and analyze it and understand it. And a lot of times things make sense in your head. And then like once you're having a conversation with somebody, you're like, I didn't think this out as well as I thought I did, and next thing you know, you're like, maybe I should. And it happens even in debates. I think that's the power of debates. Unfortunately, I think most debates now is really just a pissing contest where people are just trying to win. Nobody's really trying to share ideas. And some people have, like, I don't even like the fact that it's a talent, it's a skill being a good debater, because the whole point of having of sharing ideas is to try to filter out the bad ideas. If you're really just focused on the skill of debating, then a lot of times you really don't care who's right or who's wrong. You're just trying to win. It becomes a game. And so I always love debates, but it's really hard to find a good one.
That's one thing I have a big problem with Jordan Peterson. He chooses the words that he's saying so carefully that people that are not academic can't debate him. So I'm like, I follow him. I think he's had good ideas, but the people he's talking to is not on his level. So he's just winning by being more, using better words.
Yeah, I get your point. Sometimes people can sound more intelligent because of just a larger vocabulary and make very like little good points. It's like you're not saying anything profound. You're just finding a very creative, intellectual sounding way of saying ideas that aren't that profound. Where somebody could have a really good idea and maybe just not be as artistic in the way they deliver it. So
Sounds like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah, he do the same thing. Yeah.
The same kind of thing where it's like they try to convince us that we're not intelligent enough to understand the words coming out of their mouth, or understand these complex, ridiculous calculations that they come up with that say, see, look, we proved gravity. Look at the equation on the blackboard back there. It's proven. Are you gonna go, Ricky and Ronnie and Zach and Reality Check? Are you gonna go and double check that calculation of the weight of the earth and be like, yeah, I checked it. Turns out okay. They want us to outsource our thinking. They want us to outsource our feelings, our emotions, because we know, right? Turn the TV on, they're telling us what to think and what to get upset about. And most of the people around us actually fall victim to that repeatedly, over and over and over again, because we are programmable. And it's never been more clear than in 2021 after a year and a half of just total insanity, where like Nixon said, right, if the American people didn't see it on TV, it didn't happen. That's the reality with which we're living in. And when we give away our power, our own senses and our own intuition, and we just throw away these gut instincts that we have, that we're being completely lied to about just about everything, when we do that, these people, they're gonna think for you, and they're gonna make decisions for you, and it's not gonna benefit you in any way, And when we do that, like for me, Ricky, where I stand on the earth, I think it's flat as fuck, and because it's just like, and last year I was violently opposing it. I was laughing it off, making fun of people.
By the way, did you check the debate on Tin Flat?
I'm not sure I saw that one. I saw Ricky's show, the Flat Earth episode that you gave us the inside scoop on.
Well, it's funny because Eddie Bravo had the same experience that I had on that Union of the Unwanted show, where in the beginning of the Tinfoil Hat podcast that Ronnie's talking about, he was saying how on past episodes when they have all these people on to talk about the flat Earth, they really don't have anybody to really push back. So he finds it like I don't know, maybe entertaining is the wrong word, but just what benefit do you get out of that? What value you get out of that when it's just people regurgitating information and with nobody who's intelligent enough to really push back a little bit? So they actually recently, it wasn't too long ago, had Eddie Bravo back on and had a bunch of people on.
It's a week ago, max.
Yeah, it was like a week ago, maybe. Yeah. And and he and they actually debated a little bit, which was nice because I mean that's how you learn, that's how you grow, and have people push back a little bit and see if they can answer it. I mean, I definitely, I'm one of those people where like there's nothing too crazy for me to believe. I mean, I just anybody who's been in this world long enough, there's so many things that seem, I mean, and a lot of things that seem absurd when you first heard it years ago. I mean, even the idea, I remember when I was really first learning about child trafficking and pedophilia, and like, you know, it's like the darkest of dark crimes. And to think that like the people on TV, the elite, hang out with these people and sometimes are these people, like blew my mind. I'm like, this is fucking crazy. I knew they were bad people, but to that extent was just wild. And so now it's kind of a little more acceptable. So my point is, same thing with flat earth, where like I'm sure, and again, I don't know what to believe because I'm an idiot when it comes down to that type of stuff, but
stop riding the fence, go deep, make a decision, and pick a side. All right, well, enough, we have enough. Ricky, you know I love you, and I would fucking go to bat for you. And but I think, man,
what's the benefit of it? Because that's one thing. That's the thing. Like, so a lot of these things, like the UFO conversation, you know, I haven't done. I've like kind of scratched the surface a little bit. There's a lot of topics that I kind of I shouldn't say I purposely stay away from. I just kind of just stay away from because I'm like, oh, this seems a little bit more important right now, or this seems like it's more relevant right now, or this has more evidence, so let me focus on this. You know, so the flat Earth thing and you know, the UFO thing and disclosure, all that stuff. It's like, okay, is it important? Yeah, you can make the argument it definitely is important, but because of my lack of knowledge of it and my lack of understanding, how does it help red pill people right now? Does it help? You know, is there like such strong evidence that it's undeniable? And I guess if you're a flat earther, you'd say, of course, there is actually enough evidence where it's undeniable, but in regards to the flat earth, even if there's enough evidence that it's undeniable, it's like, okay, well, what am I trying to do when I have these conversations? Like a lot of times I'm trying to provoke thought. I'm trying to maybe expose corruption, expose some conspiracies. And with that, it's like, okay, I've heard a lot of different perspectives on the purpose of lying about that. What's your opinion on why you think they lied about that?
Honestly, I think it's like the most foundational lie. Like it's the ultimate, where they're convincing you and everyone else to, like I said earlier, to not trust your own senses, your own eyes and ears. Like there's a quote from Orwell where he says, the party told you to ignore the evidence of your eyes and your ears. It was their final, most essential command. So if what you're seeing and experiencing in this experience, you're standing, right? Like I think someone on the podcast you had last time was talking about this meditation that he did, that I think it was Crow 777 that said it, where he was like, and I've done this before he even mentioned it, but it's like you go outside, you try to clear your mind, and you go outside, plant your feet into the earth, and you imagine that, and you close your eyes and you just sit still, and you try to imagine that you're spinning on a 23.5 degree axis at 1,000 miles an hour, you know, and then that earth is spinning at 66,600 miles an hour around the sun, and that's hurling through with the sun through the Milky Way galaxy at like almost 500,000 miles an hour, and then the galaxy is shooting off through an ever expanding, just random universe, right? Meaningless, godless, Big Bang accident universe at 670 million miles an hour or something like that. So you do that, right? You close your eyes, you sit, and you try to imagine that, and you're like, okay. And then you go back inside and you chill out for 30 minutes. You go back outside, you put your feet in the earth, and you close your eyes, and you just sit still for 20 minutes. Just be still, you know, slow down your mind, slow down your heart, all these kinds of things. And then imagine that you're flat and you're motionless. You're not going anywhere, and everything above you is actually revolving around you perfectly, because you, the individual Ricky Verandis, you are important. You are significant. Your life has meaning. It matters. Like your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, it matters. It changes things fundamentally once you can open up your mind and your heart to allowing that information to come in. Because when research is done from a humble place, you're not trying to prove anything. like I didn't have any connections, or I didn't have a stake in the game and into whether it was round or whether it was flat. But when I look back and I'm violently opposing these things, and I'm asking these questions, I'm not a flat earther, as I'm like asking every other question about every other conspiracy, and I'm getting violently ill. Like I'm shaking, I get anxiety, I'm sweating that somebody's calling me a flat earther as I'm questioning every single other thing I've ever been taught. And I look at that reaction, and I didn't even know anything about the globe. I didn't know that it was 25,000 miles in diameter. I didn't know that it spun around at 1,000 miles an hour, and it went around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. I didn't know any of these things. I didn't know the curvature calculation, which is if spherical trigonometry is a thing, which they claim it is, that the curvature calculation would have to be 8 inches times the distance squared. So if you had an object that was 100 miles away, that would be, when you do that calculation, that would result in an object being 6,666 feet below your line of sight, past where you'd be able to see it. So when I didn't know any of these things, Ricky, at all. I knew nothing about like how, you know, they're like, oh, you know, what about the explorers and the, you know, the sea explorers who've circumnavigated the globe? And they're like, well, if you think about it like a bullseye, if you think about it like a flat plane with a bullseye, you could still go around the bullseye. You can circumnavigate the bullseye. You can do all those things. You can do any possible thing that they talk about. What about this? What about the seasons? What about there's an explanation for everything on a flat plane, just as there is with a globe Earth. And for me, it just fundamentally changed things. It brought all of it together for me, especially what I had gone through being a heroin addict, wanting to kill myself, as I kind of told you guys the last time. I didn't think that there was like a creative intelligence to any of this. I thought it was random. I thought it was all random, and that I was random, and that I was insignificant, and my life didn't matter, and it didn't have, and that's why I was so spiritually lost, escaping with these, you know, horrible, horrible drugs, instead of just being happy to be alive and being grateful to be alive, and realizing that I am important and I deserve to be here. I've made, as flawed as I am, you know, all the mistakes that I've made in life, that's not who you have to be. You know, you're not all your mistakes, you're not all your flaws and your weaknesses, you're everything. Your life's up and it's down. We're up and we're down. We're human beings. We're trying to navigate this crazy complex, you know, life that we find ourselves in. And for me, man, flat earth, if you have the courage, like, go balls deep, pick a side and, you know, like, you know, start talking about it. Cause it's like my eyes see forever. I mean, hundreds of miles I can see with my own eyes without special cameras and, you know, all this kind of stuff. But if you have the right cameras, you know, you can just see even further, and you can zoom in on the stars with the right camera. And these stars, I think Dave on your podcast was showing some of them like in his backdrop, but these stars look like different colors, and they're prisms, and they're just morphing. And so I haven't seen it with my own eyes through these cameras, but I have a good friend that has a Nikon P900, and I've been trying to coordinate getting with him so I can like kind of see for myself, because when and where I can, I try to get eyes on, you know, eyes and boots on the ground. Like, for example, with the geoengineering, or, you know, I'm not even going to say the C word, because it discredits the whole thing. But with geoengineering, the spraying in the sky, I started getting into that, and I was like, I would see these photos of these retrofit nozzles, like right in line with the jet stream, like right in line where there would be a condensation trail. And I'm seeing these photos online, and I'm seeing some people claim that they were, you know, photoshopped and that they weren't real and all this kind of stuff. So what do? I go to the airport with my camera. I check out these, you know, these engines, and I zoom in, and I see these retrofit nozzles behind on every commercial aircraft. So I'm not a person that's just, you know, always going on what other people are saying, because people can lie, and people can manipulate us, and for whatever reason, right? It's so sophisticated. And so I try to get eyes and boots on the ground when and where I can. I mean, it's not always doable for some people, but that's the way we have to sort of approach it, in my opinion. And we have to be open to these things. Like, you see people's reactions to, like, when you bring up the earth, they fucking get the vapors, dude. Steam starts blowing out of their ears. My brother, like, wanted to physically fist fight me one night because, like, NASA and Elon Musk come on and announce that they're on Mars and they have a car in space, which is, Elon Musk said it looks so fake that it must be real, talking about his Tesla in space. He said it looks so fake that it must be real.
Like,
have you ever seen that picture? I mean, it is ridiculous.
Your brother will defend him over you, who is his brother. And
yes,
he knows you.
He would literally fist fight me about our differences about Elon Musk. He's pushed me physically when I tried to talk to him about germ theory versus terrain theory.
Oh man.
Like, I don't just pull this shit out of my ass. Like, it's not completely unfounded for me to ask these questions. And my brother's like, no, we get each other sick, man. It's not. No, I'm like, well, what if we don't? What do you know? And he's like,
that's the thing. It's like, why isn't he at least, like, anytime somebody has a theory that I've never even explored, I'm immediately intrigued with it. I'm like, I wonder why this person believes this. There must be something there. There must be something that makes a little bit of logical sense. And then you dive into it. And it's kind of a similar reaction. Like, remember 9/11 back in the day, how upset people would get if you even questioned it? I mean, now it's like a lot of people growing up today and kind of new into the alternative media world, they don't remember being the guy who brings up 9/11 like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. People were, well, not 20 years ago because we're at our 20-year anniversary, but 19 years ago, 18 years ago, whenever, like, when people were still so emotionally still affected by seeing those videos, and it's because it impacted people in such a way, and it felt so just like something out of Hollywood. It seemed like something that you couldn't believe could happen, and you just question it. I mean, just try to entertain some things like,
can I interrupt you there?
Yes, please.
Because on this subject, I talked to my coworkers about Osama bin Laden. He was a freedom fighter in early 1990s because US funded him to.
You're talking about in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The Soviets, and that was.
Yeah, he was fighting the Soviets, and US funded him.
Yeah.
And I asked my coworkers to Google that, and they did, and they read the newspapers where you can see Osama bin Laden freedom fighter, and still, even if they saw the fucking newspapers, and they said this can't be true, and I was like, you're fucking reading history, and they are still saying that the cognitive dissonance, they can't accept they have been lied to. So even if you tell them the truth, they will never believe you.
Well, if it shatters your worldview, your first reaction is to push back. I mean, it's if you honestly, deep in your heart, believe something is true, and then a piece of evidence comes that says the opposite, it doesn't matter who we are. Like, our first reaction is to push back, to be like, no, like, that can't be true because I'm convinced of this, and we've all done it.
Did you do that? Did you? I didn't do that. The first time I saw something that shattered my reality, I was like, what the fuck? But this is interesting. I want to learn more. So why does people push back? Because I don't do that. Like, he's talking about flat earth, and I think the round earth guys won on tinfoil hat. I don't give a, like, but the information, if you tell me something that I don't know, I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. but most of the people get shut down. So why do we do? I don't do that. I want to hear more.
I would say you're a rare instance if you're actually coming from a place that's still open to new information, whereas what we see regularly with the majority of folks is that we tie our emotions to these things, right? Where, just to think about the globe stuff again, right? The first thing I remember this, like when I was a little kid, getting the first spinning globe, like getting my hands on a spinning globe, how much fun it was. Like, it was so cool. And they're telling me that this is the world that we live on. So now I'm so emotionally invested. Like, you want to find out what I'm talking about, go up to a 7 or 8 year old and tell them that the earth is flat and that space is not what they told us it was. Watch, you better run, son. You better run. Okay. This is how emotionally tied to our beliefs we are.
Yeah, but if you tell a kid that's young enough, right? Like if I tell my 6-year-old who's still exploring and trying to kind of
young enough, yes,
yeah,
but that sweet spot where they're like.
But that's kind of like my point, because what you're making a good point. Like, the reason why that 8-year-old or 10-year-old, as you get older, they get tied to these ideas is because they were told this is true. And like if I tell my 6-year-old, like, hey, this is what we think we know, we could be wrong, like, ask questions, then he might be much more open to these new different ideas when he gets older. But usually it's like, no, this is the answer. Anybody who says otherwise is an idiot. It's crazy. We know this for a fact. And like you were saying, Andrew, so much. And
Andy, call me Andy.
And just, you look so professional with the hat. I want to call you by your professional name. But the thing is, like, it's all a matter of, like, your upbringing, right? Like, I
was going to say, like, even like our education system at a school level, you're pretty much taught what history is, not what it could have been, or like an alternative view. You're saying this is how it happened, this is the way it went, and this is how you learn it, this is the answer. And people just put blind faith into that. And like I haven't really dug deep into the flat earth, but my first instinct is not to trust anything that NASA says. I mean,
that's a good starting point. That's a good starting point.
Everybody complains about how bad Nazis are, but yet through Operation Paperclip, what do you know? Some of the head scientists helped start NASA. And not only that, this blew my mind watching Jason Bermas the other day. Apparently, he talks about the author, Andy Jacobson, who wrote all kinds of books about Area 51 and NASA. And apparently there's over 600 million classified documents about Operation Paperclip that have just never been declassified. And, it's like, and people are wanting to believe that our government's going to disclose about UFOs when they can't even tell us about Operation Paperclip. Or
that's why Nazi German they didn't lose.
Yeah, well, I've heard that argument a lot.
We are living in Nazi Germany at the moment, and people don't understand that.
I would I've been doing some research about World War II, and I have some different takes on it.
Go watch Corbett before you speak.
Well, I've watched a lot of stuff, and I'm a big Corbett fan. He was the guy who got me into this game, so I am deeply grateful. But I'm just saying, Ronnie,
they did not lose.
Keep your mind open, okay?
Yeah, I will.
Keep your mind very open. The events that took place during World War II are not exactly how things happened, in my opinion. I've spent a lot of time down this one.
So yeah, I meant like the Nazis did not lose. The Axis lost. Well, Hitler and his fellows are still running the world.
I think there's definitely a lot of folks that were involved there that are spread throughout our world and intelligence and things.
The Nazis lost, but the higher up, the people who really truly had power, they didn't lose. They almost got elevated to a higher position.
I was just talking specifically kind of about like the whole Holocaust and whether or not it did actually happen the way they said it did. Like,
you're gonna get canceled.
I know this
Ricky's getting
take
banned
this.
for sure.
Ricky's starting to shake a little bit because
Listen, I'm starting to think there's somebody at YouTube that thinks like that's a fan of the show or thinks I'm cute or something, because I can't understand how I'm still on YouTube. I just had Dr. Robert Malone on my show, who's been like banned off everything, and he emailed me like a couple days after. He's like, Rick, how's the show still on YouTube? I'm like, I don't know, Dr. Malone. I'm like, I'm actually also surprised because he's been obviously dealing with censorship everywhere. I'm like, you're still.
We all have.
Yeah, you know.
And my sister works for YouTube, Ricky, so I put in the good word.
Thank you. I'll send her a Christmas card with the kids.
Hey, by the way, Adam, you've been low on episodes lately. What's up?
Yeah, I'm just doing one a week, man. I sold my house and I'm moving, so I'm taking care of all that stuff. That's, you hear all the echo in my podcast rooms because there's nothing in here anymore. Like,
where you look like Maynard.
I'm not really a fan of Tool, so
I'm not either, not anymore. It used to be my favorite band, and then last year on Joe Rogan, he goes on Joe Rogan and he's blaming his numb hands on the big scary virus that we can't talk about.
Yeah,
he literally,
I just thought they were just kind of boring. I'm not really into like grunge type rock, but
yeah, it actually helped me through a pretty dark time, like while I was just trying to turn inward, like throughout my addiction. And like there's a couple songs where
which did you like, Andy?
I like the newest one they put out, like probably better than any of them. Whereas like there was a song called Invincible and Descending, and then there was those two songs. Like I was listening to that song Invincible like last year when I was like going through it, like just nuts.
I'm the same way with Under Oath. What the hell was the name of the song? It was on Define the Great Line, or it was the very last song.
Hey, that's one of the best albums.
Yeah, it is, and it's
Love that album.
Whom It May Concern, right? That you remember I think it's the last song, To Whom It May Concern.
Yeah.
A great song, and I was going through some serious drinking myself at the time, and I basically had alcohol poisoning, and I was literally in my room detoxing for I think 2 or 3 days, maybe. I didn't leave the room, like no drinking, no bathroom, I didn't know. And that song was just on repeat over and over again. And it's like, I hear it now and I still get like goosebumps and I get emotional. I'm like, why am I getting emotional? There's nothing going on. Like there's no, but it's like, it strikes a chord because it just, I get subconsciously like brings me back to that moment. And so it has such a personal effect. And there's certain songs I think we all have, right? That either like, it was the big hit when you met this girl, or when you were having a good time and life was good and you're out with your buddies, so every time you hear that song, it kind of reminds you of that. So it's that's a beautiful thing about music. It can bring you to it's like just a reminder of different parts of your life and different moments in your life, and it kind of brings you back to that place for better or worse. But I've always been a big believer of same thing, like depressing music. When I'm depressed, a lot of people, it sounds counterproductive. It's like it's like, why do you want to listen to sad music when you're sad? It's like, because it makes me feel like somebody else has been through what I'm going through. So I think
you're not alone. Exactly. That song Nutshell by Alice in Chains was like, you could,
another guy who's a addict, and I mean,
yeah. So when I was like really in the throes of my addiction, I was like, that song I would play that song over and over and over again, and I would just like keep crying because like, I mean, it's important to feel, right? It's important to feel love, to feel sadness, to feel all those things, like even grief. Like they're there. These feelings are there for a reason. They're teachers,
alive. I mean, even sadness, even if there's something about like, I don't know, it's just like this connection to it. It's almost like we forget we're humans, like we're robots doing these routines every day, and then either happy tears or sad tears, whatever it may be, it just, I don't know, that just emotions is such a forgotten aspect of who we are and what makes us us. And a lot of times we I just had Whitney Webb on the show, and I haven't released the episode yet. I haven't got around to it yet. Hopefully early next week, but Monday or Tuesday. But we talked a little bit about her personal issues that she's been having recently with like just people kind of discredit her, or people talking shit, or even the personal thing that she shared on The Last American Vagabond, that whole story. And sometimes when you have somebody like Whitney, who's like such a well-spoken journalist, always brings her A game, has amazing information, we forget, and like she's still a human who deals with things, who you can seem super intelligent and super logical and like you have it all together, but we all have bumps in the road. We all have issues. We all have moments of weaknesses. We all have moments where we fuck up. That's why when I do that Ricky Rants on Rockfin show, I try to get a little bit more personal on that show, because one, I have nobody to talk to. I'm just by myself. And then two, I just a different aspect of us and what I do. And a lot of times like we're deep into information and certain historical events, but it's also important to talk about those other things. Sometimes your favorite episode of a podcast it's similar to music, right? I mean, sometimes your favorite episode of a podcast isn't the one that has the most information. It's the one that's the most personal. And just like in music, same thing. Like sometimes your favorite song isn't necessarily the hardest to play, or one that shows off like some incredible musicianship, but it's just a song that's maybe simple but strikes a chord. It just hits the chord correctly. It's the right melody, it's the right mood, it's the right something, and it really affects you personally. So it's that human part of it is really important. While we're sharing, what are some of your favorite bands of music? I'm kind of curious with everybody.
Well, in September, I'm going to this fest in Birmingham, Alabama, called Furnace Fest, and there's going to be like Under Oath, Converge, Zal, a band called Every Time I Die.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're kind of like asking out. Oh no, well, Every Time I Die, they I'm trying to think actually, because they're
more like Southern tinge hardcore metalcore.
Yeah, because they were big during the metalcore scene.
But like it was supposed to, obviously this stuff was supposed to happen like 2 years ago, and of course COVID and whatnot, and it looks like it's going to happen in September. But like I was doing a little bit of research, and there's this campaign. Like you can go to this website called backsforlive.org, and it's a campaign by the National Independent Talent Organization. And it's like this conglomeration of venues and talent agencies and people that book for bands. And you go to the website, and it's like got a ticker on how many vaccines have been given. And it's like the faster we get COVID-19 vaccines, the sooner we can open our clubs and arenas and theaters. And they even have a playlist. Enjoy Shot in the Arm, your vaccination soundtrack. It's a Spotify playlist. And it's got like Hit Me With Your Best Shot by Pat Benatar, Needle in the Hay by Elliott Smith, Give Me Shelter by Rolling Stones, Magic Stick by Little Kim. And it's just, but the scary thing is since these are all like booking agencies, I'm afraid that, they might say, oh, well, we're not going to book your band, if they've been vaccinated, or, it almost, they try to act like they're being all good and almighty, but it really seems pretty nefarious.
About that, Ricky, can you take the link I put in the chat and share it? And you should supposedly, we know how hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin doesn't work, supposedly. And this is the government of Finland, this article that I shared in the chat, because Yle is the government of Finland. They have fucking made this shit. And I'm so fucking, I'm laughing my ass off, because I've been talking about this to my coworkers for a year. And now they have made a nasal spray with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and one more thing. And I'm like, how is this even possible?
Well, you know what? This is something that I watched the UNWANTED. Y'all had Massimo on, and afterward I ended up watching the documentary about hidden cancer cures, and it pretty much blew my mind. You know, all the suppression of these cures that, you know, a lot of them seem to have some really basis, that, you know, to, at least to be tried as an alternative. But it made me realize that, you know, I don't think anything like that will ever be approved. There will be an alternative cancer medicine approved, because, you know, you have actual FDA approved drugs right now that are being suppressed. You know.
Yeah, but this shit is approved in America.
Oh, well.
It says that in the article, at least. I haven't looked deeper into it, but.
Well, that's the thing. Well, Joe Biden says they're doing a DARPA initiative, a DARPA-like initiative to fight against cancer. So it's like, yeah, there may be a cure, or now there may be an approved ivermectin type drug, but it's one that's not going to be cheap. You know,
I think this is going to be cheap. That's the thing.
Well,
but I'm not very optimistic that they're really going to just to make it out to the world and give it to everybody. But it's Yle is the state news of Finland. So if there's even I'm too drunk to talk, but they made this article that's humongous. Why would they even report this? And they're trying to shit on it, of course. They're saying that Trump took hydroxychloroquine, and the WHO is saying fuck you, but they're still saying we have a nasal spray with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and something else. So I think this is big. If it gets out, people will.
Well, you say it's cheap, but those drugs are super cheap too. So it probably takes very little to nothing to make. So there's probably still making.
Of course.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's always the thing is, like, they take something that works and they try to profit from it. When I had Dominic D'Agostino on, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, years ago to talk about the ketogenic diet, I mean, that's one thing that was really interesting when I first dove into the ketogenic diet, was how the government actually, I mean, he got money, he got grants from the Navy because they were interested in it. And instead of like finding out like there's all these benefits, let's promote it to the public, they're like, there's all these benefits, how do we put it into a pill? How do we make a pill that puts you in ketosis? You know, that was like their next step. It's always like, how do we profit from it? So and then if you guys heard the show I did with Jim Abrams, who did Naked Gun, the filmmaker, same thing, right? I mean, the guy had a son who had really violent seizures, couldn't figure out how to solve it. This guy was a very popular, tons of resources to kind of get a hold of the best doctors, had money, had resources, talked to all the best minds in the field. Nobody gave him any options besides prescription drugs. On his own, he ends up running into a book about John Hopkins having some luck with putting kids in ketosis and getting rid of these seizures, because it has something to do with like the way your brain processes glucose as an energy source. So if you put them in ketosis, they're burning fat for energy, and then you basically resolve this issue. And he was like first excited about finding this solution, then eventually upset that all these years of going to the best doctors. And I mean, he talked about how he had friends in high places that let him cut in line to go see doctors in certain places because they were just like such a wait for them, and still nobody even suggested this natural dietary therapy to possibly, give it a try. And then he started the Charlie Foundation, named after his son, to do it. But it's another perfect example of how people have this idea that if your doctor doesn't suggest it to you, it must be bullshit. If he doesn't know about it, it must be bullshit. And like Zach talked about, Massimo, he's awesome. I mean, he really does great research. All his documentaries are phenomenal. Cancer Cures. When I had him on years ago, we talked about I think Cancer Cures on the show. I definitely suggested it. But even when I had Dr. Brzezinski on, like it was like early 2014, probably within the first 12 months of me doing my show, his story will just pull your heartstrings, because this guy was a Polish immigrant who basically found this thing called anti-neoplastones, was having some success in curing people and treating people with cancer. And he tries to get it FDA approved, and the FDA just sues him and won't let him FDA approve it. So he can only give this treatment for terminally ill people, because it's considered, experimental treatment, because they won't FDA approve it. And he was saving people's lives. And these people were going to court and testifying, saying, I had 3 months to live. I had 6 months to live 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. The beginning of the documentary, if you guys haven't seen it, I mean, it's really one of the most emotional parts of the documentary. There's this police officer who had twin girls. I believe they're twins. I believe they're girls. And the twin girls, one of them got cancer, and the doctor's like, basically she doesn't have much time, but if we do chemo and radiation, we give her like the typical treatments, we can extend it a little bit. Well, the radiation was so toxic that they had to use gloves to change her diaper. That's how that's how bad it was. So he's like, fuck this. Like, I'd rather my child live a little less time, but not in pain, than live a little longer in pain. So he gets her off that, the radiation. Eventually finds out about Dr. Brzezinski, goes to him, puts his daughter on his treatment. They go to an independent hospital because I believe she had a tumor, to go see the progress of the tumor. I think it was within 6 weeks or maybe a couple months. Tumor was completely gone. So, the story's has a happy ending. Well, sometime a year goes by, his daughter passes away. They do an autopsy. The radiation killed her. And so this is how the documentary starts. So it's like right away, like hits you hard at home. And just think about, like, this guy, the people will say, and that was the first time I've seen the power of trolls. I mean, this was the first 12 months of me doing my podcast. So this was sometime in 2014. I just shared it like, hey, I'm having Dr. Brzezinski on, super excited. I'm a big fan. And I just had all these people attacking me, like would fake accounts. And I'm like, who the fuck is taking the time to attack me? I'm like, I have like 100 listeners. Like, nobody's listening to my show. But it just showed that there's people out there dedicated, and they actually document this in the documentary, but I experienced it firsthand, out there just to discredit him. Like, anybody who says something positive, they make sure they share something negative, that, oh, this person passed away and they did his treatment. Well, guess what? A lot of people do chemo and radiation and pass away. Does that mean that you're going to ban chemo and radiation? Like, are those not options? Of course they are. So you're not going to save 100% of anybody, but if there's some type of success rate that's worth trying, and the truth is, they didn't show any negative effects. So if it didn't work, it just didn't work. And he was only getting people who were terminally ill. So think about it. These were already people who were already at the finish line. They were at the end of the line. They had no other options. And there's also, I forget who it was, somebody in the CIA, high-ranked CIA person, went to him. He cured him. Somebody in the Saudi family went to him and cured him. He's out of Texas. And but amazing story. If you guys I don't know if it's still on Amazon Prime or even YouTube. It used to be on both, but it's been a long time since I've watched the documentary. I highly recommend you guys seeking out Dr. Brzezinski's documentary.
It amazed me he was able to even try the alternative therapy. There's been cases where a 17-year-old had lymphoma and didn't want to go through the chemo, and the court ruled that she wasn't old enough to make her own medical decisions.
But when you're 12 and you live in North Carolina,
you can get a vax.
You can decide to get the, emergency use authorized toxic injection or not.
See, this is what scares me. Like, there was another case where a 13-year-old boy didn't want chemo, and his parents didn't want to give him chemo, and he was forced to. Well, what's this? Stop them from implementing that. Oh, well, if you don't give the vaccine to your kid, we're going to take them away from you, or we're going to force it on them no matter what. I mean, to me, it's a slippery slope, and it sounds crazy, but I could definitely see it happening.
But look what's happened in the past year. I don't think anything sounds crazy anymore, because that's ultimately where they're sort of heading, where in certain countries they tie benefits that people receive from the government to vaccination status. So like in Australia, I'm pretty sure it's Australia, where people who are receiving benefits have to get vaccinated. And so I don't think what you're saying is out of the realm of possibilities at all, where they're looking for any excuse to take kids from their parents. I mean, they're absolutely looking for anything. So yeah, I don't think that's...
15-year-old girls can get TRT at Planned Parenthood in Oregon.
TRT, wow. That's incredible. Yeah, and they're saying that like kids that are like 5-6 years old can get these transition medications and stuff like that. Blockers. These conversion, what is it? Yeah, hormone blockers. Yeah,
I think you can start at 6.
Yeah, the one in Oregon. Yeah, you can go get testosterone replacement therapy without parental consent in Oregon at 15.
Wow.
I'm surprised homeschooling is still a thing. Like, it just seems like the government wants to be the parents.
Hey, has anybody heard about not getting your kids a birth certificate when they're born, and if that can cause like major issues down the road? Or is it just something like when they turn 18 and need to like go get a job, they can go get a social security number and a birth certificate?
That's interesting.
I've been diving kind of into that realm of things. I know there's some people, there's a guy by the name of David Straight. You should go check out Adam. He has a podcast, and he does a lot of this kind of work where he's trying to empower, people that live in the United States to sort of change their status from an American citizen to a state national.
Yeah, I've heard about all that stuff, and
yeah,
but I don't really buy it. I mean,
yeah,
it's cool to try it.
Yeah.
And like all these people are like, oh, it's like the sovereign citizen thing. It's like, you can do it, and maybe you might win a court case, but you're still gonna get fucking pulled over eventually. You're gonna get drug out of your car by a cop. You're gonna get your fucking ass kicked. You're gonna get taken to jail. You're gonna lose your job because you're in jail, and then you're gonna go to court 6 months later after being in county jail, and the judge is gonna dismiss it, and your life's fucked. So,
that's a possibility.
That's the
for
problem
sure.
I have with all that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely happened, but I think what happens is that there's actual success stories too, but they don't tell you about that. Mm-hmm. It's basically.
But what's the success? Getting the case dismissed?
Well, no,
and having your life ruined.
Well, no, like people basically avoiding paying taxes by correcting their status. Like there's something called a 508c1a trust. So if you're a business owner and you have an LLC or something, you can actually convert your business status from an LLC into a trust, and these trusts are operate in such a way that are basically free from paying income tax. And I mean, in the IRS tax code itself, Aaron Russo did a great documentary about this called America from Freedom to Fascism.
He's got those like 2 people in the history of the world that have won that case.
Well, there's a lot of people that don't pay taxes. Again, you're not hearing about these sort of cases. They want you to be indoctrinated by fear of recourse, and to some degree your fear or whatever is not unfounded, because people that don't know what they're talking about sort of go and try to approach these things like you're saying, and then they and in some cases you could say everything properly, have all the right paperwork, and maybe they would still fuck you anyways, right? So that's always a risk. But we're at the point now where it's like, if enough people had the education and stood up and did this, that, you know, maybe that we would get somewhere. But we're just at a point now. I think we're at a crossroads. I can feel it, where it's like we either stand up for ourselves and our rights that we know we have given to us by God or nature, whatever you choose to believe. And, you know, we need to reassert ourselves in as many possible ways as I can. So there are success stories, but I'm not familiar with the type of risks if you don't get them a birth certificate later on in life. I'm still kind of getting into this stuff, but
something tells me the consequences wouldn't be light.
Yeah, possibly not.
But are you legally required to do it? That's the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think just for a social security number, you're required, and you know how.
But do you need does a baby need a social security number? Because I remember I heard on Crow 777, he said he just went and got his social security number when he was like 16 years old and needed to go get his first job.
Oh yeah, I did hear that too. I don't know what he meant by that.
If foreign or refugees, whatever you want to call them, if people from other countries come here illegally and they work and there's plenty. I'm Portuguese, and coming here, I came here. My parents came here on a work visa, more or less, and I became a permanent resident. But there's plenty of people who were here illegally for years and years and years, and so it'd be kind of the same idea. Like, you can still survive without it, but at some point, I think it would make your life more convenient to have it, because somebody's going to be asking for it. I mean, there's probably ways around it. Because there's people that I was surprised. I remember my parents sometimes would be like, hey, Joe just got his papers. I'm like, he's been in the country for fucking 20 years. How do you mean he just got his papers? And I just assumed if he's driving, if he's working, if he has a house, but so there probably is some workaround. Why are you asking, Adam? I'm just curious. Like, is it because of the idea of like not being tracked, or, maybe
I just, I'm going to homeschool my kids. And I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I'm going to homeschool them. And I think there's a bunch of shit on the books in Oregon where they need to be vaccinated, even if they're homeschooled, and they come and they do wellness checks on your house and stuff when you homeschool kids here. And it's just, I don't want to deal with all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. We homeschooled. I think my kids are probably going to go back to school eventually, but for the time being, yeah, they're homeschooled. And I love it. I mean, the thing about kids, like, my wife's always like, there's so much pressure because I want them to, I'm like, they're learning. Even when you don't think they're learning, they're learning. You don't have to, like, the problem is we have education kind of tattooed in our brain, like it has to be a school atmosphere. Like, that's where people learn. No, so it's like, oh, this is the way they taught me, so this is the way I have to teach. So anytime, like, my wife, because I'd be busy during the day, and so she would try to take the lead. And she'd be getting stressed. I'm like, listen, tomorrow I'm homeschooling the kids. Like, I'm going to hang out with them all day, or for this week, I'll do all the homeschooling. And it wasn't just about like recreating a school program or something that you'd go through it in school. It was like, okay, let's do something fun, but you're going to get something out of this. You're going to learn, like, kids are competitive. They like games, so it's like, make something a game, let's see let's get points for doing doing some math, and whoever gets the most points wins, or, stuff like that, or let's color, or let's draw this and have like a drawing competition, or, all these little things. It's like, they're learning in that process. Anytime you can get their little brains.
Best option, Ricky.
What's that?
I think homeschooling is probably the best option right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's still plenty of ways for them to socialize, whether it's sports or. I've also heard about like the homeschool. I think it's called learning pods, where like you'll have like a group of different homeschoolers get together and they all learn together. So you have more control of what the curriculum is.
Yeah, and there's unschooling. You see a lot of people talking about unschooling. So they go to school, and then once they get home, you kind of try to extract all the things you didn't like that they're trying to instill in your child. Like I mean, I'm all for being patriotic and all that stuff, but the whole, like, it's almost that whole part of it also kind of, I'm worrisome if, like, okay, I don't want anything that's going to instill them not questioning authority. Like, it's when they get home and it's like, listen, your teacher, I don't want you being disrespectful to your teacher, but she's probably wrong about that. And, you know, there's actually some questions about this. And there's, you know, a lot of times my son would come home and would tell me about what happened in school or something the teacher said. I'm like, well, you know, you try to find a fun way of kind of sparking thought in his head in regards to kind of questioning things, but you don't want him going back to school and being like, listen, my dad said you're an idiot, you know, or whatever. So it's but I think there are ways of almost doing both, where your kids can go to school and still get the benefits of both, you know, get the benefits of going to school. Because I think, you know, in some, you could make the argument there are some benefits, and then also have
what are the benefits?
Obviously the first one you hear is the social thing.
But that can happen outside with homeschool as well.
It's just much more difficult.
Well, to me, like, well, my question is like, what are the mandates where you're at, Ricky, in the school system?
Well, my kids have religious exemptions for vaccine, so they're completely unvaccinated. They obviously, you know, the whole mask thing was a big reason why they didn't go to school. We're like, well, my kids aren't wearing masks, so they're going to be homeschooled until.
Because it's like at this point, if your kids at school wearing a mask and having the distance from other kids, it's not really much socializing anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like all the parents that I would talk to, they're like, oh, you know, I'm too busy. My kid's going back to school. I'm like, what? And they're like, my kids actually want to, like, that would be their justification for it, would be, my kids actually want to go back to school. I've asked them, and I'm like, yeah, but the image in their head of what school isn't what they're walking into. So what you're signing them up for is basically juvie. Like, they're going to prison. You know, you got to be a distance away from each other. You can't touch anybody. You know, it's like, I'm like, that's not enjoyable. You know, that's not, and who knows what type of long-term psychological trauma they're going to have from just being in that environment. Like this whole idea of like the adult can't even touch you. If a kid gets hurt, the teacher couldn't even go and help them up and give them comfort. My son, when he was playing soccer, and when they basically tried to start the soccer programs pretty quickly during the height of all this, so they were still trying to deal with all the mandates and try to keep everybody happy. That's what the coaches would do. Somebody would get hurt, and the coaches would stay like 6 feet away with their mask on, you know, with their muffled voice, asking them if they're okay. And the kids like confused because they're so used to, like, anytime a kid gets hurt, somebody comes and comforts them and picks them up or asks them if they're okay. And you could just see, like, it wasn't very comforting being 6 feet away, screaming, "Are you okay? Do you need to go to your parents?" You know, it was so weird. But yeah, no, I mean, Adam, I'm all for, like, I'm not against either or. I know personal experiences.
I'm against public school. I'm against private schools.
So what's your biggest problem with it?
That you're giving your kids to the enemy. You're giving your kids to be raised by the government. I fucking hate the government.
Yeah, was it Malcolm X that said only a fool would let his enemy educate his kids?
Yeah.
You
send your kids to school, and you think that when you get them back at 18, they're not going to hate you, like you're.
Well, I think it's how much. Well, okay, so this is why
that's a great point.
There's so many examples of kids that went to public schools that you're like, this kid turned out like.
And it's not just public schools, private school too. So.
Private, yeah. So when you're the parents, because I'm a big believer that nobody's gonna give a shit more about the kids and pay attention to what they need or what they want or how they're progressing like the parents. You know, that's just the bottom line. Nobody's going to love them the same way. Nobody, you know, there's a connection that the parents have with their children that I just think is, you just can't recreate that. And a teacher just isn't going to give a shit. And it's almost impossible to give a shit about every kid as much as you give a shit about your kid, you know? And so I without a doubt, I think that there's some issues that happen when you send your kid to school and you basically say, here, you mold this little, you know, ball of just this little child that is trying to consume information and trying to understand the world around them. Because what ends up happening is, like, that kid has questions, and if your child has questions and you're not the one answering them, then, like you said, the enemy, you know, for a lack of a better term, the enemy is the one molding their perspective on the world, because they're the ones answering the questions. They're the ones giving them the explanations. And so what I do with my kids is I make sure, and obviously, as you guys know, I don't have any problem over explaining things or talking too long. So I get, like, parents are usually doing like the, Yeah. Stop asking questions. Like, let me give you a short answer. Leave me alone. I'm the opposite. I'm like, okay, come here. Let's talk about this. Let's really go into what you don't understand or what you want to know, and I'm going to do my best in trying to explain that. And
just imagine if you didn't have to deprogram your kids at the end of every day.
yeah, well, hopefully my kids are really young. So, I mean,
can I pause you guys here?
for deep
Because I live in a.
Listen, Ronnie, you're hammered. Stop interrupting me. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I live in a socialist country. So
do we.
Yeah, no shit. So do we.
No, you guys don't do that. My government just made it. You have to be in school for 18 years. That's the law.
That's our law.
That's our law too.
Join
Well,
the
we get paid to do it.
Sounds like you're better off than we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be there.
Yeah, and they're gonna try and change the age here to like start at 3.
Yeah, in California, it's starting even lower.
Yeah.
Of course, they want to start them earlier because it's the quicker they get their hands on them, the better off they are, right?
Yeah.
They're paying us to be 18 years in school.
Yeah, we're in debt.
If that's,
and
you have to question why. And I'm the people around me that are highly educated
and also sober.
They're sober, but yeah, that's the most stupid people in my life. They never ask any difficult questions, and if you ask them difficult questions, their brains melt down. So I'm with Adam. I'm thinking about how do I keep my kid sane, because if I put him in the school, surely he's coming back in like 10 years. Dad, you're a fucking racist.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I prevent that shit?
Self-directed learning.
My government said my kid is going to school for 18 years. 18 fucking years. That's almost 1/4 of his life.
Ronnie, is that a new thing, or could you not go to school for 18 years before? Because in the U.S.,
we go to school for. You have to go to school till you're 16 in most United States, Ricky. So that's 11 years.
Yeah,
15,000 hours. 15,000 hours.
They changed it this year or last year because now it hates equality. Everybody needs to have the same opportunity, and that fucking bullshit. But we all know it's because they need to brainwash every fucking person.
Well, I'd say in your case, Ricky, that, your kids might go to public school and still, turn out all right because you're heavily involved in their life. You're going to help deprogram them. But unfortunately, for a lot of parents, a lot of parents don't really do a lot of parenting, or they're busy, or they're busy doing, they're busy working themselves to death to provide, and they can't really ask, what they're learning in school. So
and they're not deprogrammed because they went to public school.
Exactly.
Yeah, but didn't we all went to public school? I mean,
we're weirdos, dude.
Can we?
How many people are there like us? It's like what we were asking earlier. It's like why are we able to hear something that's different than what we believe and not make a screeching noise? It's because that's like the main thing I'm trying to figure out on my show. It's like why can I like get to a point where I feel disgusting in my stomach because I realize I've been lied to, and keep going to the other side to figure out why, instead of like turning around and going back where I came from.
Yeah, I would like that.
Because we're weirdos. Like most people can't do that.
Are we weird though?
Yeah, well, I mean,
I don't fucking get it.
Not weird, but at least we're the minority. So that makes us
the normal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're the normal ones. You look at it historically. I mean, when Greek mythology, people are always, all this stuff came from people trying to ask questions and look for answers. Like that's the most natural thing you can do. I actually think like False Reality said, like without a doubt, the opposite to me is weird. Like it's weird for me to not want to understand the world. I mean, you guys have heard me say this on the show a bunch of times. The metaphor of like, I think I look at life as a giant puzzle, and everything that I gather, every piece of information, everything I learn throughout the journey is one more piece of that puzzle. And at the end of my journey, I might not have enough pieces to see the image clearly, but I'm hoping I have enough where I have a better understanding of what it could be. But the point is, one of my purposes on this planet for whatever time I have is to gather as many of those puzzle pieces as possible, and learn and explore and challenge ideas and explore ideas. And when I meet somebody who doesn't have that urge and that want to do that, to me, I don't get it. It's like I just don't.
And
like,
that's the most of the people.
And that is well, that is a lot of people. But I think there's more people like us and you saw it during 2020. I'm sure many of you who were outspoken, people would be like, wow, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that doesn't make sense. And I was curious about this or curious about that. But most people just don't want to ask these questions. I mean, look at flat Earth, for example. Andy talked about it. If you just bring it up, a lot of times people's first reaction is like, that's fucking crazy. Like, how dare you even like mention it? But how much of that's actually just because of pure pressure? Because they just assume like, okay, I don't want to sound crazy. And everybody's saying that if you question it, you're crazy. But if you put them by themselves with enough time, maybe with a couple of drinks with Ronnie, that would open up and you're like, you know what? Maybe there is something about that. Maybe that, I get it. I had my brother-in-law over the house a couple weeks ago, and we're in the backyard. I was having a cigar and we're having a drink, and he had to, we were talking about flat Earth. And I think this was sometime after I did it was like right after I did the Flat Earth Union of Unwanted show with the guys. And same thing. Like I brought up how we just did one, and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, come on, man. And that was literally like his first words and reaction. And I'm like, have you actually looked into it? I'm like, have you actually seen that the other side of the argument? I'm like, they make some really good points, man. I'm like, it won't seem as ridiculous as you think it is when you actually hear the other side of the argument. And that's, I think most people who are very passionate about specific topics, a lot of times what boggles my mind is they haven't spent 1 second seeing the counter argument. I mean, the vaccine thing's the same thing. You don't know how many times I've gotten in debates with people. They're so passionate about like how my kids should be vaccinated or how every kid should be vaccinated. And yet like 2 seconds in a conversation, I'm like, you know nothing about this topic.
Nothing.
Like literally
not
zero.
Like zero.
Yeah.
You make the best analogy. The best analogy I've heard was from you with the peanut butter.
People get so mad that I keep saying it too.
I know. I love it, dude. You know what though? We are programmers, right? We're content creators. We are programmers. We're casting spells out there because all casting spells is speaking or writing or whatever. Keep hammering it. The number one thing for their mind control, right, is repetition. Just repeat it over and over and over again. So just keep hammering those points. It was the best one ever. Like you actually bring that up with someone who's, like you said, taking that stance of their heels are dug in and they don't know why. Just like how I explained earlier with my aversion to flat Earth. I dug my heels and I knew nothing about it, by the way. Zero. I knew nothing about flat Earth. I knew nothing about the globe Earth. Still, or now I know a lot more about the globe Earth. But at the time I was violently opposing it. I knew nothing. You guys were kind of asking why. I have this book here. It's called Government, the Biggest Scam in History.
Yeah, Howard or Etienne de la Boétie.
Yeah, right.
I'm friends with that guy.
You are? That's awesome.
Yeah, he came on my show.
I'm gonna try to get him on my podcast.
Speak in person. I know his real name. If you need it, hit me up.
Okay, I think Howard. Is that Howard?
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to utilize this thickredline.org model when I go out and do activism, trying to recruit freedom-minded police officers and stuff like that, because I'm trying to build bridges with anyone and everyone in every institution where every interaction I've had with police officers has been terrible, so I have a good reason not to like them or to even fear them. But we're at a point where I'm just sending it, and I'm going to try to be kind to everyone, not blame anyone for anything. We're all put in these weird positions as unwitting accomplices in this whole system that we've created to actually enslave ourselves, right? Where we're demanding our own slavery. And so the way I'm looking at it is like, we kind of have to be. I realized in my journey of healing through heroin addiction and suicide ideation and stuff, like, in order to forgive yourself, you have to first, you have to understand what your traumas are. So like the psilocybin, Ricky, like we talked about in the last podcast, how it sort of unlocks, it's like the key that unlocks the doorway, you know, to who you truly are and what kind of traumatic memories that we've suppressed over the years. And so you got to understand who you are. But then secondly, it's like once you do that, you realize you have to be kind and gentle with how you like criticize yourself, because we're all our own worst critics naturally, I think. So when you go to, you know, look in that mirror and go deep within, that process is very painful and nobody likes to do it. Like where we're asking, why do people just refuse? And it's like, because like we talked about in the last show, Ricky, it's almost impossible for someone to admit that they were wrong or said they don't know, you know, but more importantly, to admit that they were wrong. We won't even admit that we were sold a lie, which there's snake oil salesmen out there, right? They have every right because of free will to sell us a lie, but we don't have to buy it. It's hard enough to acknowledge that you were sold the lie, and then it's 50 or 100 or 10,000 times harder to say, yeah, I bought it. I bought that lie. I got my ears pierced when I was a kid, and I was like fake tanning, and I was, you know, cared about girls and cars and the most trivial things. And I bought every single lie that was sold to me over the years. And now I just want to live. I want water. I want food. I want a roof over my head. I want love in my life. I want community. I want, you know, to do the right thing. And it's like, that's what I want. I don't want shiny things. I don't care about clothes or shoes or cars or houses. It's like, I want to learn how to grow food and we build tree houses with kids and, you know, like shit like that. Like, you know, stuff that the good shit in life, you know. It's about the connections we make and the love that we experience and the lessons we learn, you know. And when you want to kill yourself and you were a heroin addict for a long time, you learn some shit. You get through that, you know. You learn some shit about yourself and the world around you. And, you know, it's like once I got to a place of like understanding my trauma and forgiving those people who really hurt me badly, you know, like Adam, you were saying like, oh, you get out of school and you fucking hate your parents. You just resent them in so many ways because they just allowed the state to raise me, you know, and they allowed the state to feed me these GMOs and this processed food and call it food and all this kind of bullshit. And so by the time you're older and you go out and you start working and you work every day, you get up at 6 and you drive. I was driving an hour and a half to work every day, you know, or it's like, it's fucking nuts. And
something you said, Andy, that I think is really important, and you can even do it in your own personal life. Even, you know, it's the whole idea of like forgiving, right? You know, you don't forget, but you forgive, and dealing with that trauma head on, you know, understanding that if you try to lock it away somewhere, it's not gone. It's just still there in your subconscious. It's still there somewhere, bothering you and affecting you and having some impact on who you are. I mean, when you look at, you know, the work of Edward Bernays, I mean, isn't that it's the same idea of how so and what I mean by his work in connections to what you're talking about is the fact that there's things that we sometimes aren't aware of that is affecting our decision making and how we react to things and what we do and how we feel. And it's the same, you know, when you're dealing with propaganda and obviously understanding like colors and numbers and how to say things and symbolism and all these different ways of kind of skewing our decision making one way or another. That's true. But when you have trauma, it's the same thing. That trauma can be pushing you in one direction or another direction. I mean, it's like that old, I mean, it's probably not even true, but and there's, I'm sure there's probably many examples of it, but that whole idea of like, oh, that if you're a stripper, it's because you have daddy problems, right? It's like that. If you talk to the stripper, you know, who's just trying to get through college, of course, if you talk to the stripper, then she probably does, you know, might not even have understand that there's a connection there, that maybe she has or maybe somebody has gone into that type of work because of other issues, other trauma, like maybe she got molested. She lost respect for her body. She lost respect for herself. So there's all, and not to say that every stripper has been through some trauma, but I'm just using it as an example. So there's without a doubt, I mean, facing it is really important. But in regards to like parenting, same thing. Like, I resented my parents for a while because it's like, okay, you guys came to America, and because of a lot of what I would hear is to give you a better life. Like, they would say that to me, and it's like, well, my better life was you being at work all the time. Where, like, if you were back in Portugal, we'd be on the farm and our lives would be much simpler and we'd all be together. So it's like, who were you really helping? And it's like, in a way, I resented that. But in another way, because actually when my parents came to America, they came here a year early. And I mean, having kids that are toddlers, like, I couldn't even imagine being away from my kids for that long. But I think they truly believed there was a sacrifice that needed to be made for the future. And so they left me back in Portugal for a year. So from when I was 3 to 4, with my family back in Portugal, while they came here, looked for work, because they were told by my family in America, like, you're just not going to be able to raise 2 toddlers and find work and get settled in and, find a place to live and all that stuff. So they did what I think is probably one of the hardest things they ever did, when that's leave their kids behind to go search. But again, in a way, like, I resented it. And then I came to terms. I'm like, you know what? Like, I almost feel bad for them, because they were told that this is how you should do things, and this is the route to happiness, and this is how being a parent means. Like, you go get a high-paying job so you can put them in a good school, and you could buy these material things and all and live in a nice middle-class neighborhood and all this stuff. And so it's like they were just sold lies that they fell for. It was a trick that they fell for. And then my father, in regards to like never being around, like growing up, I mean, I basically remember him when he got home from work and he was tired. That's basically my only memory of my father, is like him coming home from work tired, and you leave him alone because he's tired. And that was it. And I remember him having his glass of wine, and like a couple minutes later, he's like, Ronnie, he's in a great mood and he's smiling, and he was a happy drunk, and which I love, and it is awesome. Him drinking alcohol never negatively affected. Actually, I think it's probably enhanced our relationship. But it's he was always a happy guy. He loved to be playful and stuff like that. But during the work week I barely saw him, and he was just at work. And I, in a way, I'm like, what impact did he have on my life? What impact did he have on me? It's like very little. But yet I look back and I ask stories about my grandparents, right? And I don't know them. Well, I kind of remember them. They passed away when I was really young, when I was like 3, 4, 5. I think I was still a toddler when they all passed away. But I remember asking about them, like, how were they with my parents? And same thing, right? You're a creature of your environment. My father always saw parenting as like, the father's job is to cut the grass, it's to use the grill, it's to local guy thing, and to do those, to pay the bills, do that type of stuff. It wasn't to nurture, to love, to any of those things. And it's like, in a way, when I became a parent, I remember how much I loved my kids, and just thinking to myself, like, fuck, man, like, my dad why didn't he tell me he loved me the way I tell my kids I love them? Why didn't they hold me and hug me and show me physical love and emotional love the way that I show and I was almost upset about it. And then I had to keep reminding myself, I'm like, because they didn't get that love, because they didn't get that. And they're a creature of their environment. I mean, how can they do something that they were never taught to do, that they never experienced? And so you hope you can improve from that. So to people out there, I mean, it's really easy to be mad at our parents for things they could have done better, but sometimes we have to stop and be like, okay, well, did they learn from their parents, and did they learn from their parents? So if we can take a big step in this progress of filtering out the shitty things that our parents did, and hopefully finding some good things that they did that we can continue doing, then, you know, then hopefully we're just a part of that big leap, that instead of it being a gradual, slow, gradual improvement every generation, we can be that big leap to make it a way bigger improvement, and really take a bigger step of being different than the way we were raised. But it's not easy, you know, and when you're dealing with a child that is dealing with real trauma. I mean, my parents, my mother and I had a very rocky relationship. We still kind of do, and it's a lot of ups and downs. You know, she's borderline a crazy person, but she's, you know, I love her to death, but she's you know, we have our issues, and but it's you know, I keep reminding myself, I'm like, well, you know, why is she like this? Why does she think this is the correct way of parenting? Why? It's because that's the way her parents parented, you know. And but in the moment when you're getting upset, it's much harder to be like, yeah, feel bad for my mother because this is the way, you know, she was taught, or this is the way she was raised. It's like, no, you're a crazy person, you know. But and you guys know, there's nothing like, you're talking about your brother Andy, and it's same thing. Like my brother and I don't see eye to eye on just about anything, and we butt heads, and he knows how to get under my skin. Like, I'm a pretty calm and collective person. He knows how to get under my skin so quickly and so fast, and he knows all the right trigger, you know, terms to use to get me upset. And then I get mad at myself, right? And this shows the power of love and forgiveness, because the second like you let it go, you know, you just feel so much better. The second, like, the friction, like, you find some way to get past the friction, you get in a heated argument or a heated debate, or you say some mean things to each other, and it just kind of lingers and it lingers and it lingers. And the finally, when like you're at the same place at the same time, and you kind of are somewhat friendly to each other, and you finally feel like that argument's behind you, you're like, oh, I feel better now. Like, that friction, that weight isn't on my shoulders anymore. So it's really important, like you said, like, so hearing somebody talk about their addiction and how they resolved it. I mean, these are lessons that you can use in all aspects of life. Like I said, in regards to dealing with your own friction with family members or friends, or dealing with your own personal trauma. And sometimes you're traumatized by things that your parents had no idea they were traumatizing you while doing. You know, there's things that, you know, I'm always very cautious of, like, okay, how do I react to this specific thing? Okay, my kid messed up. Do I yell at him? Do I not yell at him? Do I, you know, how is he perceiving it? Because I'm perceiving it as like, no, I need to be strict right now. And then it's like, okay, well, is he perceiving it the same way, or am I going to traumatize him in some way that's going to be counterproductive, and it's going to actually do some psychological harm? So it's a really tough thing, you know. That's why parenting, real tricky. Yeah, I mean, that's probably.
I don't even have kids, and when I interact with my nephews and young cousins, and I mean, I'm an uncle now. I haven't had a chance to meet my nephew, but because my brother, my other brother, not the one that violently attacks me for talking about the earth, but my oldest brother, he's 40, and he basically didn't talk to me for a year because I was so vocal about COVID, you know, and just drawing lines in the sand of like, I won't wear a mask, and this is, you know, I have reasons why, but he doesn't want to hear me out in regards to that. And but he literally won't talk to me because of COVID. But it's so tricky, like you said, just interacting with these kids, like even when you're not their parents, and say like we take them to the park or something, and they're doing these things that you naturally want to be like, hey, you know, don't do that, and kind of get stern and these kinds of things, because it's like, that's what I was used to. I got a belt, I got soap, you know, like if I swore, and it's like, but I learned that word from you, Dad. Like, I said the F word, but I learned it from you. Why do I have soap in my mouth and you don't? How does that work? You know, like I remember the first time I got the soap, and I was just like, but you guys say this shit all the time. Like, so I'm just like understanding the concept of hypocrisy from an early age, you know, where like some of these families and friends I hang out with, they're like religiously cursing in front of their kids, but then once their kid says this word, it's stern and like an angry tone. And I'm just like, I'm just like silently sitting there like, wait, you've been dropping this word every 5 seconds, and now you're yelling at the 12-year-old for saying it? How does that work?
To me,
Like,
intentions. I look at it the same way I look at comedy. Like, what's the intentions? If my kid says something like the F-bomb, or he says something that he heard us say because he's trying to be funny, then I'm just like, try not to say that around people in public. It's like that's literally how I react to it. I don't get upset at all. I don't care. Like, to me, it's like they're just words. I'm like, I'm like, are you going to judge my child and believe that he's a bad person? I'm like, spend 10 minutes with him. I'm like, you will have no doubt that he has a huge heart and he's a good person. Like, just because he said an F-bomb doesn't, shouldn't dictate if he's a good or bad person. And I'm a big believer of like, picking your battles with it doesn't matter if it's your siblings, if it's your wife, it's your husband, if it's your mother, parents, whatever, if it's your kids. Like, just because I'm that hierarchy of authority and I could just be stern all the time and just be like, never once feel guilty about like I'm just giving rules and giving rules and giving rules and all that. Like, no, it's like I'm gonna pick my battles. I could be stern all the time and force you to listen to me all the time, but what good is that going to do? Like, I'd rather pick and choose my battles. If a moment comes where I really need to be stricter and stern for maybe to protect them from getting hurt or whatever, then I will be. But most things, I'm like, if they, I'll push back a little bit. Okay, they want to wear some ridiculous looking shoes that doesn't match anything that they're wearing. Don't put on those shoes. Put on the other shoes. I really want to wear these shoes. Okay, fine, wear the shoes. It's like, that's how I am. I just don't like, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I mean, when we were kids, like, there's plenty of things that seem like a big deal to us that our parents didn't think was a big deal. I remember there was times where like a bunch of my friends were at the park playing basketball, and it was like, oh dude, we got like a great group of friends that I haven't seen in a while. They're all there playing ball, but it's like going to be dinner time. And my mom's like, no, you're not going to the park. And I'm like, no, I'll be right back. It's like you're trying to negotiate. And to them, they just completely looked at it as like, no, you're just not going. Like, and they just move on with their day. They could care less. And to me, that moment was the biggest moment ever. Like, so it's like, no, I really want to go. It was heartbreaking that I couldn't go. And that's the thing. Like, a lot of times we just look at like children, we say no, and it's not a big deal because it's not a big deal to us. But we forget, like, from the way they're perceiving the world, it's a huge deal to them. Like, sometimes we have a kid that lives up the street that will knock. We'll be outside all day, and it'll be hot as hell. It's late, and then we come in, and then he just happens to get home, knocks on the door, and be like, "Hey, can we play?" And my son will be like, "Please let me go outside and play." I'm like, "We literally just got inside." I'm like, "And you haven't ate. It's late." I'm like, "We've been outside all day." I'm like, "It's not, it's not our fault he hasn't been around." Okay, go outside for a little bit. It's like, it's and then my wife will get so mad at me, and she's like, why? It's like, you can't just let him do whatever he wants. I'm like, you're right. But if that thing I'm letting him do leads to him getting harmed, or leads to him get, physically or mentally harmed, or if I'm protecting him, then I get it. But I'm like, I'm not protecting him from anything. I'm protecting him from what? Fun? He likes hanging out with this kid. He's outside. Okay, so he eats a little later. So he's out a little later. Who cares? Like, to me, I'm like, when we're out with our friends, do we not say, hey, I should really be home. I got to work tomorrow, but fuck it, I'm going to have another drink. I'm like, that's him. I'm like, that's my son. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to stick around, have another drink, and be outside a little longer, So that's kind of the way I always try to perceive things from my kid's perspective, and try to remember that something that seems minimal and not a big deal to me might be a big deal to them. And it's like, if there's no need for me to protect them from something, then fuck it. I'll save the rules for when they're really necessary. And that's, to me, that's what's really important. Like, save the rules to when they're really necessary. For the little minimal things, like, why fight over those little things? Let them be free spirits. And I mean, not to be a hippie or anything like that, but like, let them be free spirits and enjoy themselves and have fun. And guess what? They're fucking learning. They're picking up social skills while they're out and interacting with other kids. They're picking up on the fact that, like, yeah, you probably overdid it, in the sun yesterday, playing outside and then playing all night, and now you're exhausted. Like, hey, you learn a lesson. This is what happens when you overdo it. You get exhausted. Like, these are all little life lessons that hopefully will come into play later in life. So it's yeah, I've never been a big fan of rules. False reality check. You guys got kids?
No, we have a dog.
Yeah.
We take care of our dog. We don't have kids yet, but maybe one day.
Yeah, we both have full-time jobs, and I don't think it's fair
Yeah.
for the kid for me to come home after 9-hour days and not be able to spend all the time I want with them.
Yeah.
And also I agree with Adam, and
Fuck the state.
I don't want to give my kids to the state all day.
No.
Heck no.
That's the enemy.
So I want to be in a place where I can homeschool, take care of the kids, which is complete 180 from what my mindset was. I don't know, like maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Where I was just career, you know.
Sometimes that switch just comes out of nowhere. My wife is 4 years older than me, and she's just like, time is ticking. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, I'm just not ready. And then one day I'm like, hey, you want to have kids? It's like, she's like, wait, what? It just, sometimes it just happens. You're like, I'm ready now. And something just, the switch just goes off.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
Maybe when we get out of this state and into a place that we want to be, maybe we'll change our mind. But for now, no.
We'll see. We'll see when we get there.
The pup is good.
Yeah.
Good enough.
You don't want a kid in Chinafornia?
No. They have to teach them all kinds of crazy shit in school here, and I'd want them homeschooled, and I want them to learn like how to do stuff with their hands. To me that's the most important thing. If you know a skill how to do with your hands, if you have a hobby that can make you money as well, or teach you something, or it's like a skill for survival, then to me that's the most important thing. I don't really care about degrees.
Yeah, my sister, she has 2 boys, and she doesn't want them in public school. She's putting them in private school. She's not in the place where she can homeschool, unfortunately, but she figured, hey, private is the next best thing. But
no different.
Yeah. I've gone to both.
It's no
I've been
different.
to public school and I've gone to private school. Fuck them both.
If you're going to the high-end schools, they're I would think they're teaching them the right way, because the high-end schools are the elite, and they know.
Well, they're teaching them how to be elite.
Yeah,
they're teaching them how to be elite.
Yeah, you're better than everybody else, right?
But you wouldn't want your kid going there anyway, unless you want.
That's better than going to a communist shit school, I guess.
What part of California are you guys in?
We're in Southern California, Orange County area.
At least you're not in LA County. They've got what? They've got 8 more hours to go, and then their mask mandate comes back in.
So weird.
I haven't been following that shit anyway. So.
LA County's mask mandate starts at midnight tonight.
It's so weird because we're like probably 5 minutes from the border of LA County.
Yeah.
So once we step into that area, we have to wear a mask in that business.
No, it's
when
ridiculous.
Across the street, it's like, okay, you don't have to wear a mask. It's dumb.
Yeah. I heard the sheriff already said he's not going to enforce it, but I guarantee you businesses will. So.
Oh yeah, of course,
for sure.
When tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty.
That's true.
Yeah, Adam, is that Deborah's?
No, Deborah's up in the Bay Area by San Francisco in Marin County.
I'm not USA. So
it's like 6 hours away from Los Angeles.
Okay, that's far. Oh,
yeah, California.
Your country is so fucking big.
Yeah.
That's what she said, yeah.
Like, 6 hours for me.
But politically, it's right next door, so it's the same exact thing for most of California. As long as you're close to a city. Orange County is kind of a weird little red anomaly in the middle of a sea of blue, but most major cities in California are pretty much the same politically.
It's purple now. I
live in Oregon, and the cities are the same as California cities here. So,
well, guys, I gotta skedaddle soon. We gotta go grab dinner with the family. Speaking of family, but hopefully I'll have you guys on the next one. I'll have to do another one in the very near future. Luckily, we streamed on YouTube. I'm still on YouTube. I'm still on Patreon. I don't know how I'm doing it, but I am surviving. I'm waiting for somebody to call me a shill because I'm still on all these platforms. But thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys having these discussions with me. Hopefully we'll stay connected. Can you guys plug all your podcasts. I know Ronnie doesn't have one. He should just stay up late, record a podcast while drinking, and just rant. I'd listen.
Yeah, let's do it.
That will never happen. I'm growing my own food when I'm not drunk, so that's what I'm doing.
Are you growing food that ferments into alcohol? Is that the maybe is that possible?
That's the next thing. For now, I'm just growing food, just
That you eat.
survive. I have a 3 months for 3 months food storage. That's the goal.
Right on. You should make videos of you growing food and teach other Finnish people how to grow food. Start a show that way.
The Finnish people are fucked. More 99% of Finnish people are so fucking dumb. It's not even.
Don't
fun.
give up, man. Don't give up. Just they're humans. They're badly misled, manipulated, lied to, deceived.
Yeah, but they're
just
stupid. So whatever. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, do your thing, man. I'm not gonna tell you how to live.
So guys, plug away. Plug anything you guys want to plug.
I guess I'll go first. Andy Gerard, you see there. I have a podcast on YouTube, but I can't post the better stuff there. So go within to get out on YouTube and Odyssey. Look for a lot more to come from me. I'm about to go on a road trip and take on CVS pharmacy and try to videotape all my interactions. I'm gonna go all these different pharmacies and deliver these this information that being taken from VAERS, the government's own data, and sharing this information with these folks, and just sort of wanting to just build these bridges, build out a network of people that are talking about freedom. I'm sure there'll be plenty of ridicule and plenty of violent opposition, but that's kind of what I enjoy doing, is like the street activism with the camera in my hand, and just talking to people and spreading love and telling people about my story. Like I'm not shy about telling people I used to be a heroin addict and wanted to kill myself, because it doesn't bother me. It's not like I'm an addict for life, like they say at AA, right? Where they're like, "Oh, Alcoholics Anonymous, you're powerless against it." Like that's the biggest crock of shit in the world. It's just
I've never been a fan of that.
Disempowering. It's just disempowering.
Why should that one life decision define who you are forever? Like
it doesn't. It doesn't. That's the thing. Yeah. It totally doesn't.
So if
it's about control.
Listen, I had a chain wallet and wore Slayer shirts in high school. That chain wallet doesn't define me. It was just a phase of my life, and now I don't wear chain wallets. I'm nothing against chain wallets, but I just don't wear them anymore. It shouldn't I shouldn't be called like, "Hey, you're still the chain wallet kid." I'm like, no, I don't wear them anymore. Yeah, but you're still him. You're just recovering from the chain wallet. You could easily go back to chain wallet at any moment if you see a chain wallet. It's like the logic just makes no sense. It just I don't know. I've had conversations with people who recovered, and they're like, oh, it's because they say you can always go back. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't, and even if you do, like, it's obviously I can understand that, but it doesn't mean that defines you. Like you're I agree with you, Andy. I'm not to put words in your mouth. I just agree. I agree with you 100%. I don't even think it's beneficial looking at yourself like you're a forever addict.
It's horrible. I've gone to some of these meetings, right, where I actually went to a meeting last year, an AA meeting, because I was like, I wanted to go there and sort of express my frustration with the whole thing that was happening, like how they took AA and NA away from those folks, that it does help them in many ways to function in life. It's not a good long-term ideology or mindset, I would argue, to be in. But I go there, I go to this AA meeting, and I'm going to express to them like how ridiculous it is that these governments are locking things down and taking this away from those folks. And I start saying something about how, like, in AA, I was like, yeah, I used to be a heroin addict. I'm like, alcohol was never a problem for me. I'm like, I can have 1 or 2 beers and not have it not be a problem. And of course, the AA crowd doesn't like to hear that, because it's, it's either all in, like you're either sober from alcohol, or, you're either an alcoholic or you're not, right? Whereas like it's about disempowering these folks, and I started to bring up what was going on with COVID, and they're like, no discussion of politics here. I'm like, it's not politics. This shit's affecting my life. It's affecting my relationships. It's affecting your lives. I'm like, and I'm trying to weave that into my story, and basically it just put me off so badly. And I just see how these people are like, yeah, my name's Tom, and they're like, hi, Tom. And then he's like, I've been an alcoholic for 35 years. He's like, haven't had a drink in 35 years. I'm like, Tom, you're not an alcoholic. You haven't had a drink in 35 years.
That's not all right.
Stop letting that weigh you down. Like it's just, we identify with these things and it becomes an issue, where it's like, I just see this. That's my view on it. But yeah. Anyways, what were you going to say, Adam?
I don't really agree with your view. I mean, I don't do AA anymore, but I owe my life to it. I'll call myself an alcoholic for the rest of my life, because if I don't do that, it makes me forget. It makes me think that maybe I can go give it another shot, and I'll fucking escalate extremely quickly into prisons, institutions, and hospitals, And if I'm brainwashed to think that, I'm okay with it, because I have a fucking fantastic life right now without alcohol in it. So
that's great, man.
I mean,
I'm not saying
it's just like saying like you had a bad interaction with one black person, so they're all bad. Maybe you just went to a shitty AA meeting.
I wasn't even implying. You're kind of putting words into my. I wasn't implying that it doesn't help people. I just said in the bigger picture of life, it's sort of getting someone to think that they're powerless against anything is not the right approach. I'm not saying it hasn't helped you or it hasn't helped other people, because I do know other people that it's helped, but I'm not.
Can I jump in here?
Let's have the guy drinking tell us about how.
Yeah, like I my family sent me to an alcoholic community, but that was just like God says you should not drink, and I feel with Adam. If he managed to control his life after that, then it's better. It's not black and white.
No, it's not. And I mean, I know born again Christians that were out, heroin addicts, doing every drug you think of, complete life is a mess, and they swear that the Lord gave them the power.
Yeah, I saw those people there.
And the thing is, like, like I say, like, how, I'm not a religious person, but if it helped you, how can I say it's a bad thing? Like, I could maybe disagree with the fact that maybe and it's similar type of thing where like, I'm like, oh, you're taking some credit from yourself because you had to go through it. You want to believe somebody else helped you. It's like the placebo effect, right? You think some outside thing is making you better, so you get better. So it's like, who am I to say that that's, that it's a bad thing? It's like, however you deal with it. I mean, if I'm working out, sometimes you have these mental things where just like, think about my kids being in danger, or think about, to get like another rep out, like whatever mental exercise or thing you can do to kind of help you get through something. Who are we to say it doesn't work? I've heard cases like you said, Adam, or without a doubt, like one of the guys that I was talking about that I play basketball with, he alcohol ruined his life, and now he has a shit together, and he's like, dude, if it wasn't for AA, he's like, I just my life would be a mess. And now he actually helps with AA and stuff like that. But I've had this conversation with him too. Like, I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, are you always an alcoholic? And he kind of had similar response where just like,
yeah. So Ricky, I've seen tens of cases, people I knew personally from the rooms of AA. Like I said, I don't think AA has a monopoly on sobriety. I think there's tons of ways to do it. But from my experience, I've seen a whole bunch of people be like, oh, I've done this for 3 years. I've proved to myself I'm not an alcoholic. And I've seen tens of those people die. My wife used to live in a really bad neighborhood in San Francisco called the Tenderloin. And I would go visit her, I'd stay at her place, and I'd see people that I'd seen in AA who weren't there for the past few months, like down there doing what people do in a terrible neighborhood full of trannies and heroin and booze, So I don't know.
No,
I don't think there's any detriment to anybody to be like, I'm an alcoholic, and I think it's empowering to be able to label yourself that and be okay with it, and to keep, trying to get better. So
now this comes from ignorance, because again, I've never.
yeah, and then like trying to explain it to people who aren't alcoholic or drug addicts is like trying to explain electricity to a cat. So
Yeah, it's true.
I agree. I agree
cat's
with you,
electrician,
Adam.
actually,
And
but my cat's
can
an electrician. Just let you know.
just one short story. When I was on the Christian camp, where you not you one sec.
Take a
When
shot. Take a shot. Okay,
yeah,
get it out. Where's the vodka?
it's in my cabin. But yeah, I was in the camp that my family sent me to stop drinking and blah blah blah. And I had one guy there that he had been sober from heroin for 13 years, and he went home one weekend and he took heroin. So I'm like, how is that possible? Is it that good? For he has been sober for 13 years and he went home for weekend and took it. So I'm like, maybe
I think
it's something else.
Well, what
I
do you
think
guys,
what's happening there.
Adam and
I,
Andy?
I
What's your? Oh, go
I
ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I was saying, I think what's happening when we see folks go 3 years without drinking and going back, or going 13 years without doing heroin and going back, it's they haven't gone through that like deep intense shadow work. Like, I think these things could work, and AA could be supportive of folks, and it's worked to many degree for a bunch of different people, but ultimately we have to like understand what our traumas are before we like overcome them. And at least in my own personal journey, I wasn't able to even know, to be aware of what the traumas were that I was carrying were, until I started exploring with psilocybin. Psilocybin was the only thing for me that got to the root cause of my trauma of reliving an incident when I was just 4 or 5 years old being molested. I had no idea any of those things happened. And once it did happen and I relived the experience and I went through the whole thing again, was when I felt these intense feelings of anger, resentment, wanting to kill people in my family, and all this kind of stuff. And then in the same experience, forgiving them is like, I think ultimately what it comes down to is really we don't get to the root cause of these traumas. We might be able to lean on this support structure or this therapy or this meeting or whatever to keep us sober or clean for a number of years. But while we're doing that, while we're staying clean from the substance itself, there has to be a deeper journey inward, that takes place. And it typically, when you hear these stories of these folks that, and that's, Adam, where I see the problem with the label. Because if it goes 10, 15 years and it's, I'm powerless against this, I can't do it. Instead of being like, wow, I'm a badass motherfucker. Like, I just went 3 years without drinking. My whole life was a complete disaster. It's a perspective shift.
So it's almost like they talk about the nocebo effect, like because you think you're an addict, you will become an addict, right? This idea of like, if you're convincing like you guys have said, now there's no such thing as one size fits all.
No.
Also, you look at it, maybe there's no one size fits all, because not everybody's drinking or having addiction issues for the same trauma, same reason. So if you're drinking or having substance abuse issues for different reasons, that also might mean there might be different solutions or different ways of you dealing with your own personal trauma that's leading to that. I'm sure you guys are familiar with like Dr. Carl Hart or Johan Hari. I've had Johan Hari on the show. Their whole perspective on addiction and depression, how a lot of it's because of a lack of community or these internal issues that need to be resolved. I mean, I subscribe to that to a extent. I'm a fan of those theories, because when you look at like addiction, right? Like why? And I remember talking to a good friend of mine who we were talking about this, and then he's like, yeah, that makes sense, because I remember going to a college party, and I did a line of coke because I was there, and I, a little bit of pure pressure, and I gave in. So I gave it a try. Never did it again. Didn't like it. And a friend of mine who was with me became a coke addict and ruined his whole life. Like, if it was about like the substance itself being addictive, like if it's not us, it's the thing, then why would so many people have such drastic drastic just experiences on it, right? I mean, caffeine is a stimulant. It obviously doesn't affect everybody the exact same way, but 99% of people will have some type of stimulant reaction to it when they consume it. If this drug is ruining people's lives in some circumstances and making people complete addicts, and in other circumstances you go in the other complete direction where people are doing it, have almost zero effect on them, never touch it again, no big deal. Why the drastic differences? Do you think it's because it's the eternal thing? It's not so much about the substance as that it's a way of dealing. It's just a method of dealing with other deeper issues.
Yeah, in my opinion, like I'm familiar with Johan Hari. I heard about I read his book Chasing the Scream, which is about the war on, the incredibly failed war on drugs. I heard him talk about it on Rogan. But I think ultimately it has nothing to do with the substance itself. Almost nothing. They have some addictive qualities in them. There's no question about it. The physical substance themselves, cocaine, heroin, Oxycontin, whatever, alcohol, they have these addictive traits in the substance itself, but it's ultimately the trauma, the tendency to want to escape from who you are, from your reality, because you're in so much pain and suffering that you pretty much don't even understand. Like, I didn't even know that happened to me until I was 35 years old. I'm 36 now. So me discovering these things about what happened to me when I was 4 or 5 years old that shaped my whole life, that dictated my behavior. I mean, that's just insane that our brains lock it away in the subconscious so we can, they say function. They say it's a defense mechanism so you can function in the world, but it's not that at all, in my opinion. It's, it really just delays true healing. But that's what I'm seeing is it's like the Dr. Gabor Mate that Johan Hari talks about in his book. He was the doctor in Vancouver that basically was he did a study, and he wrote the book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And he did a study that said all addictions begin in pain and they end in pain. So he talks a lot about the what was going on in the household, when the child was growing up, 0 to 7 years old. Our entire worldview and our perspectives about the world basically are shaped in that window, 0 to 7. So like you were saying, Ricky, like having all these reservations about how you interact with your children in all these different moments. Do I be stern? Am I a little more compassionate? Am I calm? All these kinds of things. We don't understand what the downstream effects of that are going to be. Even at birth, like Dorian Yates was on Joe Rogan's show a couple of years ago. He was talking about this DMT experience that this guy had. And he was like in his 50s, this guy, and he was like on the floor, like holding his neck like this and sort of like quivering like a fish. And they like asked the guy a number of months later, like what that was all about. And this guy who did the DMT was like a horrible, terrible drug addict mess for like his whole life. And what he was reliving in that DMT experience was that the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck when he was born. And he had no idea. He lived his whole entire life having no idea that these things happened and that they occurred at birth. And it dictated his behavior for his entire life. So we suppress these traumas. So when you say, Ricky, oh, there's some people who haven't been through trauma, that's not possible. There's varying degrees of it, right? And there's some people that have suffered the most vile, heinous trauma you could ever, in your wildest dreams, probably couldn't even imagine. And then there's others that, so it's just varying degrees, but it's not a contest. It's not a competition. We're out here trying to just be alive and live meaningful lives and have love in our lives and try not to harm. Most of us just want to live and not harm others, but we kind of do indirectly with our actions and our behavior and all these kinds of things where, yeah, it comes back to trauma. And a lot of us, our willingness to go and seek it out and to understand it, because it's pretty dark, some of the things you uncover. Nobody really wants to go down that road, but on the other side of all that darkness is joy and calm and peace and beauty and love and connection. And that's what I've found in my journey anyways.
Yeah, we're definitely all gonna have to get together again. I feel like we just scratched the surface of this topic. Hopefully I can get the same cast of characters again, on the next one, because I think that one, these conversations are super beneficial to people listening who might be going through similar things, and two, I learn a lot because again I am ignorant to this topic. I haven't personally experienced it, so it's always intriguing to me how you guys handle it and really have the internal strength and courage to kind of get through those humps and in your lives and bumps in the road. It's amazing. It really is, guys. Hats off to you guys. Not the Mexican hat because I like it, but hats off to you guys for being able to just go through that and come out on the other side. I have a lot of friends, especially live in Massachusetts. I'm sure Andy knows we're kind of known for being the pill epidemic capital of the world, and when that was at the height, I had many friends that passed away, and that's one thing I kept saying during the whole COVID thing too. I'm like, how come nobody said shit about the pill epidemic? And that was killing tons of young people. I mean, that was
90,000 people last year, 90,000 overdoses last year. Not a single mention. That's up, like, I don't remember the percentage of the increase, but typically on a normal year in the last 15 years, it's been like 56,000 to 70,000 roughly of overdoses. But last year, 2020, that's up 90, to 90,000. And alcohol sales were up 380%. 2020.
That's mostly because of
year over year. Yeah, mostly because of Ronnie. but you know what I mean? Like
my thing.
A 380% increase year over year, 2020 from 2019. And then of course, domestic violence is up and domestic abuse is up and child abuse is up, and all these folks are locked in their homes with these abusers of theirs and can't go out, or don't have the means or whatever. And we can't even bring it up. And me, I won't wear a mask. I won't take a vaccine, but I'm a bad person because I won't wear a mask. But I'm out here getting vocal, I have all this compassion that I'm expressing in all these other ways, because how are you going to make a judgment upon me for not doing this one thing? Well,
they're brainwashed. I mean,
of course. I understand the reason for the judgment.
Well, it's like Adam Curry. Adam Curry said this on last time he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and it's something that I think about all the time. They are just as convinced that they're doing the right thing as you are convinced, and we have to remember that. We have to remember that, like, they're not. Believe me, especially when it comes down to like my kids and stuff like that. I get upset when like somebody tries to like even suggest putting a mask on them, or that they should be wearing masks, or they shouldn't be out in public near other people or whatever. I get upset, but I have to keep reminding myself, I'm like, they truly believe they're doing what that they're suggesting something that is best for my kids. They could be completely wrong, and it could actually be the opposite. It's harmful, but deep in their heart, I think their intentions could be good. I mean, not always, as we know, there's plenty of just assholes who are just using this mask thing and vaccine thing just for a justification to be an asshole and just kind of, point fingers and judge others. But I think in some cases there are people who just have been completely brainwashed and tricked, and their anger or frustration with us could be because they truly believe that they want us to do the right thing, the same way our anger and frustration with them is because we want them to kind of see the truth. So without a doubt, I mean, we're sorry, this show is always going way off the rails. I'm like, didn't we were supposed to plug some stuff like an hour ago? But so go within to get out. I highly recommend getting your show also RSS feed, Andy.
I'm going to.
Yeah,
I've been so bungled, like disjointed with some things that are happening in my personal life. It's hard for me to get the time, but I'm gonna try. Is there a way I can get a hold of you, like so we could have like sort of a direct line, maybe offline?
Hit me up.
What's the best way to get in touch with you? Because I'd like to
connect with me on the Patreon in the messages, and then we can connect further from there.
Okay, cool.
And
right on.
Yeah, awesome. And so I hope people check that out. Adam, obviously Deborah Gets Red Pilled.
Yeah. Deborah Gets Red Pilled podcast. Yeah, like Ronnie said, our volume of episodes is going down. I just bought a 15-acre homestead in the misty, foggy hills of Northwest Oregon. So I think I'm going to start another channel and maybe another on YouTube and maybe another podcast with my wife documenting rebuilding this homestead into a place that hopefully we can, do everything that we talked about today, grow food and raise kids and stay away from the state. But yeah, for now, just listen to my podcast. We're on YouTube and anywhere you can find podcasts. So thanks for having me.
It's a compliment, Adam. When people get mad that you're not putting out enough content, that's because people actually enjoy it and they want to hear it. So it's definitely a compliment. But Ronnie, you got False Reality Check to check out, and you got Go Within to get out. So go kill some time, put down another 6-pack, listen to their stuff, dude. You just got exposed to some new shows.
Yeah.
You're not even throwing up yet. I know you're still going to be up for a couple more hours.
No, it's fucking 2.
I know it's late.
0 to 13. I need to go to bed.
Ronnie, I'm so glad you make these. You always keep things just not too serious. So False Reality Check, plug away, guys.
For sure, we're False Reality Check. I don't like to release my government slave name, so just call me Buffalo.
Call me Mrs. Rambler.
Yeah, and you can follow us on anywhere, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. We're on Twitter, we're FRC Pod, and Gab and Float, we're False Reality Check. And you can email us also at frcpodcast@protonmail.com, and we'll respond out. And thank you guys for talking to us, and we appreciate it. I love listening to everything you guys have to say. Yeah. I agree with almost pretty much everything you guys have to say. The earth is flat and fuck the state.
Hell yeah.
Oh, Ricky, before we go, I'll plug my email because I did get a couple new subscribers after the last time I was on your show. So thanks for that. I'm really grateful to be here, but I love these conversations, and I just love people that are open-minded enough to really just question things, like I always say, I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. Somebody quoted that. I forget who did, but it's not my original thought, but that's where I'm at. And I just want to push the envelope on what we're questioning. Keep an open mind, Ronnie, about the Holocaust and those events. I could share a bunch of great information with you there because it didn't go down that way. But AGIRARD978 at protonmail.com. If you have any questions, want to hook up, collaborate, I'm getting active, and I'm not stopping, so I won't shut up until they proverbially shut me up.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
All right,
Like-
brother. All right, I love it.
Thanks, guys. Hey, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your Saturday night with me. I really appreciate it, guys. Hopefully we stay connected, and we'll talk again in the near future.
For
Hey,
sure.
everybody.